Hello and welcome. I have a very important guest with me tonight. Marcia Zimmerman is back. We met and did an interview years and years ago on leadership, and she is here tonight to talk about anti-Semitism. Marcia is the Senior Rabbi, as many of you know, at Temple Israel here in Minneapolis. And she's been the Senior Rabbi for 19 years, was at the church, though, or at the synagogue, for 31. Mm-hmm. So a long run.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
I learned in reading about you that you went to Macalester College.
I did.
Majored in what I majored in, sociology.
That's right.
And then went on to Union. Is it
Hebrew Union College?
Union College,
yes.
Where you got your divinity degree.
Mm-hmm.
I want to start out just having you define what you see as anti-Semitism,
mm-hmm.
because you will have perhaps a little different way of defining it than I would.
Right. Well, I think in some ways that's the hardest thing to do. It's the simplest thing to do, right?
Yes.
So anti-Semitism is a complicated social force. We've grown up with it all around us. It is, in many ways, seeing that Jews are some force that are too powerful in our society, that they control things, that we have more power than we deserve or should. And so the Jewish community that looks into and really values success, values moving forward, values being the best in what you do, it gets turned into this negative of the Jewish people being too controlling, having the puppets of the world, and then blaming us for all the ills in the world.
Which must feel extremely unfair.
Well, it feels very insidious, and it feels scary. We are not far, 70 plus years from World War II and the Holocaust, and that trauma is very much a part of who we are as a people. And so when we see these kind of traditional anti-Semitic tropes, like we have more money and we control the political world and we control the media and we control all these aspects of this world that we really are not controlling, it feels very scary, like there's going to be a tipping point to that.
And the anti-Semitism is getting fueled too by some of our leaders around the world. I mean, it is a scary, I think that's reality, isn't it?
Well, I think, again, it just gets kind of put into that lens. Anything that happens gets seen through that lens, and then it gets really, the narrative is always that Jews have more power. You know, that's how you know. Like, people ask, how do you know that's anti-Semitic? And I like to say it's an anti-Semitic trope if it talks about Jews having money, Jews having too much power, Jews having some kind of control over the media or Hollywood or whatever. When there are Jews who are in those industries, but the idea that we control them is where it tips over.
Right, and that word control is a dangerous word, isn't it?
Yes.
And as you said, insidious.
Yes, so, very insidious, yes.
Insidious.
Yeah.
Do you think right now that it's as bad, the anti-Semitism feeling in our world is as bad as you've seen it in your career and lifetime?
In my lifetime, you know, I am a post-World War II baby boomer, and at the end of the baby boomer period, and we have really post-World War II have lived in a world where anti-Semitism has been around, but it has been quieted down, right?
Yes.
And so people didn't feel like they could say it out loud. And now all of a sudden people are feeling that they can say these things out loud. So we have never been naive to the fact that the society is based on making sure that people separate from each other, that there's fighting among groups who should be allies, and that it can rear its head at any point. But I have to say, personally, I grew up in a time that feels like it is so in the past right now, and literally it's taken a minute and a half for that feeling to happen. So it's really problematic and disconcerting and very upsetting.
I read an article not long ago, and a rabbi in I think in Pittsburgh or New York,
Yes,
had put in triple paned anti-bullet glass in his office.
Yeah.
And that hit me and made me think, oh my gosh, what is this world coming to?
Yeah. I mean, Pittsburgh, what happened at Eitz Chaim at the Tree of Life Synagogue, where someone came in and in the middle of Shabbat services, during worship with no one doing anything, and gunned down so many people in California. Again, sort of a Jewish place that we felt so welcomed into this country and so
that was
open.
Right north of San Diego, right?
That's right. That's right.
And then the attack in New Zealand, which was horrible. I mean, in the last, 8 months, 6 to 8 months, it's been an extra awful time.
It has been sort of an attack on religious people, and it's a problem that we didn't think would be back in our midst, but it is, and so we have to confront it. We can't put our head in the sand. We can't pretend like it isn't a reality. We need to speak out against it. And for me, the true antidote is interfaith relationships. I believe it is the antidote to religious violence. And so for me, that's the work that's really, really important. So having a multi-religious group of people, senior clergy, that we meet once a month for breakfast, and we speak about the world, and we do programs, and we're trying to create a deeper connection between our congregations. We do a lot of work on homelessness with a nonprofit we established called Downtown Congregations to End Homelessness. So we work very much together to combat the ills of society, and we do it from a multi-faith, interfaith lens and relationships, and that is an antidote for me.
So action in a way that you feel unified with other faith leaders. Westminster, Plymouth Congregational.
That's right. St. Mark's, Hennepin Methodist, Unitarian Society. We have the mosque, Masjid An-Nur, so
Basilica,
Masjid
too.
Yep.
Yeah, such a great group.
Yeah.
There you're one of many leaders. When you're, though, at your synagogue and people are looking up to you for guidance and support, first, Marcia, what do you think people are most afraid of, kind of at the deepest level? And then second, how do you handle dealing with the fears of so many people, or anxiety? Maybe fear is not always the word, but
no, fear is
the word.
I think it's a good word.
Okay.
For me, I think it is so much bigger than all of us. I think we are in a play in the midst of it, that you can look at the slice of what's happening in our country and in the world right now, or you can see it in the midst of a larger whole. We are transforming exponentially our world. So what do I mean by that? We are moving to technological realities, which we all know, but we're really becoming a post-industrial society and time. That is a huge transition.
And stressor.
And stressor.
For the world.
Absolutely. Throughout the world, the entire world. So how we communicate, how we get information, what is going to be our money, Bitcoins,
Right,
all of that, our currency.
Up for grabs, kind of, right?
Everything is up for grabs. And if you look at the Industrial Revolution, if you look before that in history, you see these are the times where there is massive upheaval, where there's a group of people who say, we need to go back. We need to return fundamentalists to what we were. We're going to go back.
And
now,
there's a lot of fear for those people.
A lot of fear.
Of the change.
But they feel certain about their answer to this change that's happening. We know that is not the answer. We can look throughout history. The people who want to turn the clock back, they don't win.
Doesn't work.
They don't win. They just don't. The people who move forward, who go into the frontier, the unknown frontier, and have the spirit of saying, we don't know what's going to happen, but we're going to take one step at a time, and we're going to move forward, and we're going to figure out what this change is, and who are excited by the change, who have the tools that we have been given for that change. I believe religion gives us those tools. For all of that, those are the people that we have followed, right? The Luddites in the Industrial Revolution, they were the ones who wanted to turn it back. I don't know any Luddites today, right? I mean, they're not really, they couldn't stop change.
Right.
So those people are going to try and turn it back. We have to move forward. We have to continue to move forward. And sometimes we get so distracted by these people who think they have the easy answers to the complex that we actually lose our energy to do the work over here, to move us forward, to be entrepreneurial, if you want to use a word that's very popular today.
In our country, yes.
Yes, and so it's not to make money and it's not to do a bottom line. Entrepreneurial in trying to figure out how you get beyond the frontier that you see today, that you know there's another one beyond, and keep our ethics, keep our values strong as we're doing that change, rather than disbanding them and thinking that's going to do any good. It's not.
So hope, positive thinking, energy going forward rather than backwards is contagious, right, for your people?
It is contagious.
For all people, really. But do you find that your congregation is able to use this kind of positivity and hold on to it?
I feel very lucky to be in the community that I am leading and that I am in and a part of. I feel very blessed. I have to say that there are moments, like there are in individual lives, right?
Sure.
We can't all be the art of positive thinking all the time, right? There's fear, and at certain times when somebody goes into a synagogue and begins to be an active shooter, there's fear. There's so much fear. And so that can really be a disability for us to move forward. But we have to talk about it. We have to confront it. We have to understand it a bit and then move forward. We can't be paralyzed by it. So it's
and that's
a give
where
and take.
your leadership is key, isn't it?
Yeah.
To keep from having that paralysis, which would be, in a sense, very natural too for a lot of people.
It can be for a short. It can be there for a short period of time, but we have to move on. And I really do feel like, let's talk about fear, because you used that in your original question.
Right.
And I think that you can't hold fear and love at the same time, right?
You know, that's a good point. Right. I once heard a little more simplistic statement, but it was about exercise, and it said, you can't sweat and worry at the same time. And so, in a sense...
Is that true?
You can't... Well, I think that's true.
Okay, good.
But it's a parallel to that, isn't it?
Yes. So, for me, one of the main ideas in Judaism, there's a whole movement called Musar, which is a meditative, really sort of making sure that we understand the world and giving us really vision for a way to bring out the best of our characters. And it's really a beautiful tradition. And it almost died in the Holocaust, because so many of the Musar sages died in the Holocaust. But it has had a resurgence, thank goodness. And there's a concept about hitlamdut is the word in Hebrew. And what it means is to be curious. And that's what I really want to foster in this day and age, is to be wholly curious, to be really see it as a way for us to, again, move forward. And that anti-Semitism and that racism and all of the isms of the world are based on really the desire to think I'm right, who I am is right, and therefore everyone else has to be wrong. And that is not a world I want to live in. That's not a world I want my children to live in. It's not a world that I think we should foster, and so we need to move on.
One of the hard things going on right now that we're all aware of, we're taping in late July, is the attacks on the 4 Democratic Congresswomen. And I was reading a little bit something that the Anti-Defamation League had said about that, and I wanted to get your comment. They said bias against one racial or religious group leads to bias against others. And I'm guessing you're saying amen to that. But does it trouble you greatly to see this? I'm guessing it does.
Of course, and I totally agree with what the ADL said. Absolutely, they live in this world all the time, and we need to make sure that we find ourselves in a diverse world, right? And that, to me, is the beauty. I like to say God doesn't make mistakes. So how people are and what they are, seem like they're, how we are created is in God's image. Now, what we do with that might not be, I don't think it's in God's image. When we use our beliefs as swords, I don't think God gave that to us, right?
People make.
Exactly. Then now we've got some human choices that are based in unfortunate aggression and desire to control, and that, unfortunately, I believe, is what religion helps us with. Right? Religion has thousands and thousands of years of giving us a way of saying your selfish desires, while they're there, can't control you. You need to see something better for the community. You need to open yourself up to understanding a better world and seeing yourself as a partner in making God's world a part of who we are.
I have to quick share a sweet little story. 2 3-year-olds, and one was my grandson, were sitting in a little wading pool, and the little girl said to my grandson, I am Catholic, what are you? And he says, what is Catholic? And she says, well, we believe in a big God. And he says, well, I do too. And that was the end of their conversation. But I thought, something was so wonderful about that, the big God. The kids were all like, all in. And that's what we're kind of missing as a world right now.
And 3-year-olds are such spiritual beings. They are just so wonderful and open and willing to make mistakes. Unfortunately, we lose that when we become adults, and we can get pretty rigid. But that is not, in the world that's coming, that is not going to be a tool that's going to work. No. It just isn't. To
Rigidity
believe that you have the truth with a capital T, whatever that might be, is not the new world. It is not the world that is open to everything we have in our pocket, a device that opens the world to us. We have to be open and flexible and be able to truly hear a person who has a very different culture, to just be interested in it and to
curious,
understand, and
right?
that holy curiosity.
I love that idea. Do you think with President Trump, we can move forward, or are we just compelled to change leadership, as I think most people I know are hoping that we can?
Yeah. Well, I really believe that that things are amazing are happening on the ground everywhere, no matter who the leaders are. Not that leaders don't matter. I absolutely believe it does. But this is
So in spite of people.
In spite of it. And
that is a hopeful statement.
I see it every day. Every day I see people who are speaking their minds. I see it. There is never one person, I don't care if they're the president of any country, who defines a country. That is not acceptable. And so for me, the beauty of it is I seek out these amazing places in this country and in this world where people are doing the work of connecting rather than dividing.
That is also hopeful, because I have thought and observed that maybe there is even a little more initiative being taken by average people when things aren't going well at the top, because people start saying, I've got to do something, and maybe take some more direct action. Others become paralyzed, though, so it's...
I am not seeing as much paralysis. I'm really seeing good people coming together, doing the work locally, which I think is, again, that reality of that change that's happening. In some ways, it's all global and it's local. And I see so much locally that's happening. I see us not spinning our wheels. I love sort of this idea of we're not like a battery that loses our energy, but we're building a muscle that the more tension and the more you work it, the stronger you get. And I really believe we're building muscle. We're building a lot of muscle.
Perhaps that's why you've been at Temple Israel all these years.
I don't know about that.
You're getting that muscle going for the congregation, too. I should mention they have 2,000 families, which is a huge group, isn't it?
Yeah.
And very diverse in terms of very welcoming.
Yes.
Really, no one is not welcome, right?
That's right. That's right.
Has it been that way your whole time at Temple Israel?
Yeah, I think we've grown in that.
You've had support from the whole.
Over, our building was built in 1928, and over the front doors, and it's built like the facade of the Lincoln Memorial, because Minneapolis, we're not in Minneapolis right now, but it was the anti-Semitic capital of the country in the 1920s and 30s.
Oh my, I wanted to talk a little history, because, but I didn't, but I didn't realize that.
Not St. Paul.
But Minneapolis. Do you have we've just 4 minutes left, but do you have a explanation for why that happened here?
There are so many different perspectives. I've heard, these are the ones I've heard. I've heard that in St. Paul, the Jewish community was part of kind of the founding of the city on some level, but in Minneapolis, we really weren't. We were kind of newcomers to it. And so that was a difference. St. Paul historically has been Catholic, which saw Judaism as a sort of the parent tradition, of the tree, the roots of the tree of Christianity and Catholicism, and so there was respect for that, whereas the Protestant community really broke away from it, and so
Martin Luther and the Reformation
Luther didn't
right,
like the Jewish people too much, and so that's another explanation I've heard.
That makes sense.
And so those are some of the things, but
it's not something we're taught much in our schools about that part of our history, is it?
We are taught that. Jews are taught
You're aware of it, but
we're aware of it.
In general, public
general,
schools don't stress that, or
No.
as we have skipped on some of the other horrible things about our history too. We just have 2 minutes left. Someone watching is maybe saying, "Oh, I want to get more involved. What can I do?" Mm-hmm. What do you say to that question?
Mm-hmm. So,
1 minute left. I'm
okay.
getting
tighter. For me, it's really action, and it's trying to seek out like-minded people who really support a better world and the common good. And there are so many opportunities. It just means getting out and finding the places that is happening, and there are so many. And I can say the downtown congregations is a great place to begin, whatever your religious tradition.
And there's a place for everybody with that.
That's right.
That big group,
if you're
isn't
Muslim,
there?
if you're Christian, if you're Jewish, if you're Unitarian, we have senior clergy who are working very hard to make connections.
Well, thank you so much for coming down on this busy, busy day for you and busy time. But it's been great getting to sit and
thank you.
Talk
This
with
was
you
an honor.
And I'm excited by your positive, energizing spirit, Marcia. It's really exciting.
Thank you.
So thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you for being with us. I've been talking with Rabbi Marcia Zimmerman, Temple Israel's lead rabbi, and I'll see you next week. Bye-bye.